Hello, everybody, and welcome to another is this one big? Big episode of the Visto Show. I think we are live and rolling on LinkedIn. Let me know if you can see me, hear me okay, all that fun stuff. It was going to be like an average episode as of yesterday yesterday morning. And then IRCC hit us with a flood of updates yesterday. Hello, everybody. Hope your day is going well. My name is Josh Schachnow, Canadian immigration lawyer and CEO here at Visto.ai. It is Friday, October the 4th. Yes, we're already in October. And yes, the immigration news and updates just keep coming. If you can see over to the left here, we have a lot of stuff to cover. So I'm probably going to jump in right away. If you're tuning in live on LinkedIn, please feel free to take part in the conversation. Brandon says, good morning. Hey, Brandon, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. And so feel free to tune in, ask questions, leave your thoughts if you are watching in live. If you're watching after the fact on YouTube, hope your day is going well. And make sure that you follow me on LinkedIn so that in the future, you can tune in live and take part in the conversation. So anyways, we are going to jump right in because like I said, we have a lot to cover. I just can't believe how many big updates continue to come, both on the immigration side as well as just in general Canadian politics. Now, this first update, I'm not going to spend too much time on it. I do like to cover some of the politics, especially as it relates to immigration, but I'm going to spend most of this episode going into more detail on Immigration Canada and their changes. I quickly wanted to mention this because we did discuss this, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks ago. I can't remember. One of the recent Visto shows, we talked about how Jagmeet Singh and the NDP party ripped up their agreement with the Liberals. And they made a whole big stink about it, and they got all their stupid news headlines and stuff like that. And what I said on one of those previous Visto shows, I wonder if I can pull it up here and send you guys the link, is that I thought that Jagmeet was still going to do nothing. I thought he was just doing it as a publicity stunt, and we would actually find out how big of a stunt it was when the Conservatives put a non-confidence vote forward and how he would vote. It looks like it was this one on September the 6th. I will link this in the comments and notes below, because you can see here we talked about the NDP Liberal breakup. If you want some proof of that, feel free to take a look there as well. I will put it in the comments right now on LinkedIn in case you're curious. But this is basically no surprise. What happened? The Conservatives called for a no confidence vote. The NDP did not support it, which basically means on one hand, they're basically ripping apart the Liberals. But on the other hand, they're saying, we don't hate them enough to call a new election because we're not confident in our party and because apparently there are some important people at the NDP whose pensions kick in right before the next election. So anyways, I'm not going to spend much more time on it than that because like I said, we have a lot of immigration stuff to dissect today, but I did want to follow up on the point. If anything, it's disappointing. Because, I mean, I guess I shouldn't be that disappointed. I'll put the link to this article in the comments on LinkedIn. If you're watching this on YouTube, you will be able to see all of these links in the description below in order of how I mention them as well. So is this a surprise? No. Is it disappointing? Yes. Should I not be so surprised? Probably, right? Classic politicians being politicians. And anyways, I'll leave it at that. So let's move on. We had some big IRCC changes yesterday, largely related to work permits. We're going to talk about the SUV work permit change. We're going to talk about the ICT work permit change. And well, I'm just going to dive the heck right in because quite frankly, there's a lot to cover. Just needed my patented segue sip there. And we are going to jump right in, firstly, to the startup visa. Now, I think the way this used to work, and again, I'll put this link in the chat and it'll be in the description below if you're watching on YouTube. Now, those of you watching can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the way this used to work, because I haven't done a ton of SUV work in my day, was you could apply for the SUV and then you used to be able to, I think, get a closed work permit, right? Because the startup visa program is a permanent residence program, which means, number one, it can take a while for them to process permanent residence applications. And number two, they want you to come and, potentially be able to start working on your startup right away while you're waiting for PR. Now, recently, what they added is an open work permit for startup visa applicants. Now, let me know what you folks think. The first thing that popped into my head when I saw this was, why the heck would it be an open work permit? Because if you're coming to Canada on the startup visa program to build your startup in Canada, why should you get an open work permit? For those of you who don't know, an open work permit allows you to work for any company. So number one, why do we want to bring these high-flying entrepreneurs into Canada to build these startups, but then also give them an open work permit to work theoretically at any other company? And then number two, the reason why this is concerning is because, generally speaking, in immigration, especially with the current government, if you give people a loophole to take advantage of, they will take advantage of it. So what do I mean by this? Are we going to start seeing all these people applying for the startup visa just to then be eligible for the open work permit so they can come to Canada and basically work on anything but the borderline fake startup visa that they've been putting together, right? So I don't really understand why they've done it this way. The best the best explanation I've heard is that, well, if you're a startup and you're still, you haven't raised a lot of money, you're not making a lot of money, you might also need to work part-time at another job. I don't know. Should that, if your startup doesn't have enough traction and funding, should it even be eligible through the startup visa program? Like, I thought we're trying to target startups that have like a decent enough amount of traction, they can afford to come. You know what I mean? Like, they've raised enough money or they're making enough money that they're able to support themselves and they shouldn't have to go get a part-time job. I don't know. You folks can let me know what you think. Ali says, good evening. Hey, Ali. Thanks for tuning in live. Hope your day is going well. That's my thought. And let me know if you folks agree or disagree. I think this is weird. If you're coming on the startup visa, especially because of the recent changes they made to the startup visa, which is heavily restricting it, it should be restricted to legitimate startups that have traction abroad, they have funding, they have revenue, and they can afford to work full-time on their startup. That's my opinion. Take it or leave it, and or leave it, and or let me know what you think, or if you disagree, or if I'm missing something here. Now, the interesting part that I quickly wanted to highlight is that a requirement to apply for this open work permit is that, number one, you obviously applied for the PR application, and number two, what some experts are pointing out, because again, I wouldn't say I'm an expert at SUV, I know a lot of the basics, but I haven't submitted a lot of them myself, is that you have to receive your AOR, acknowledgement of receipt, before you can apply. Now, why is this a problem? Because apparently it can take months and, 6+ months to receive your AOR, which means you have to submit your PR application, maybe wait 3, 6, 9 months to get your AOR, then apply for your open work permit application. God knows how long that might take to process. And if it doesn't get processed very quick, you might be waiting a year or more to get your open work permit, right? So I don't know. I like, this doesn't seem that great to me, unless I'm missing something here. If there's any SUV experts or other folks that have opinions, please feel free to share. I don't know if I'm missing something here. It seems like a weird change to me, but I guess we will have to wait and see how things go. So anyways, that's it for the Startup Visa Open Work Permit. Let us segue to the next topic. Spartak is chiming in. He says, hello, Josh. I agree with you. So weird to have open work permit for startup. Okay. Thank you, Spartak. I'm not crazy. Well, debatable. I'm not the only one thinking that, is what I'll say. Yeah, it definitely seems odd. Like I said, especially considering the recent restrictions they made to the startup visa and how restricted it is. There's so few that can even apply this year. So you'd think they'd be saved for more legitimate funded startups. Anyways, thanks, Spartak, for sharing your thoughts. If you have any others, I'm always open to them. We're going to move on to the next topic. Big change. Like, it's sad to say, entrepreneurs are really being negatively affected this week, which I think is a terrible thing, and I'm going to get into why in just a second here. But the next big change being that they've made, so number one, this is the page with the program delivery updates. So whenever they make, changes to any of the key programs, I'm going to post a link again so you can follow along if you'd like. Now, some of the main ones, or one of the main ones that you'll notice here, is the intra-company transfer update, right? So this one right here, Canadian interest significant benefit intra-company transferees, and it looks like this. And again, I'm going to copy and paste the link because heck, I'm a friendly guy. And what this basically talks about, so you can see here October 3rd. Salome says, first time in here. Thanks for the space. Awesome, Salome. Welcome. Welcome to the chat. And feel free to share any thoughts, opinions as we go along this as well. Now, here's the big, obviously, if you want the full details, read all the full details, right? Especially if you're a practitioner, you should know all the details. I'm going to highlight the key differences and key changes, right? Because number one, we don't have all day. And number two, there's a mix of immigration consultants and lawyers. And there's also just a bunch of you who just like to follow us for immigration updates. And you don't necessarily need to know the little pins and needles and, cross every single T. So I'll give you a quick overview. Number one, what is an intra-company transfer? Generally speaking, right, we're talking 30,000 foot view. This is an LMIA exempt work permit that allows you to come work for a company in Canada that is related to a foreign company, right? So for example, and I'm going to pull up my lovely paint here. So here's how it works, right? You have a foreign company, right? This is a company that's somewhere outside Canada. And then I'm going to say Canada. And then I'm going to say, Canadian company, right? Now, pardon my beautiful drawing here, right? So this is Canada, and there's a Canadian company. This is not Canada, and it's a foreign company. And so basically the way it works is if you've worked for at least 1 year at a foreign company and you meet a few other requirements, right? Like you have to be either in management or specialized worker or something like that. But if you've worked for at least 1 year, you can get a work permit to transfer from your foreign company to your Canadian company, right? Inside Canada. And that also makes it LMI exempt, right? Assuming you're eligible, right? So we'll put here LMI exempt. Now, this is really important because getting an LMIA is number one, a pain in the ass. And number two, it's an extra cost, it's an extra process, et cetera, right? So not only is this extremely convenient if you're a big multinational company with, subsidiaries and parents and partners around the world to move people in and out of Canada, this has become very popular, and I'm mentioning this because this is kind of what the big change is focused on. This has become very popular for entrepreneurs to expand into Canada, right? So what happens is they're living in whatever their country might be, and they have a foreign company, and the foreign company is at least 1 year old, and then they say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to open a company in Canada, and I'm going to give myself an ICT work permit and move myself into Canada as a manager, director, you know what I mean? President, whatever the terms are. And that's become a relatively popular pathway for entrepreneurs to expand into and immigrate into Canada. Now, with that being said, let's take a look at the changes, right? And probably the biggest change here, again, read this yourself if you want to get down to the pins and needles. Probably the biggest change that I wanted to highlight is clarify that ICTs must be transferring from a foreign enterprise of an existing multinational corporation, including guidance on how to assess whether it is a multinational corporation. Now, do they say it here? Specialized? No, as a reminder. Okay, so I have to go I have to go into the actual page itself. So here it is. This is the letter of the law. And again, I'll post this as a link so you can follow along if you'd like. But basically, the big change here is that when assessing an ICT work permit application, officers must ensure that the foreign enterprise is that of an existing MNC with revenue-generating operations in at least 2 countries before establishing an enterprise in Canada. So what does this mean, right? As I said before, previously, a lot of even small or medium business owners who had one company abroad would open up a second branch in Canada. Now what they're saying is that your foreign company has to be operating in at least 2 countries already, not including Canada, right? So you need one company in country number 1. And now you also need another parent or subsidiary or branch or something else, and we'll call it foreign company number 2. So now you need 2, right? So basically, if you're a small to medium-sized business owner and you've only been operating your foreign company in one country, you can no longer ICT into Canada. You first, if you don't have already, have to expand your company into a second country, start generating revenue, and then you can try to apply to ICT into Canada. So I see this as a big negative for small to medium-sized entrepreneurs, right? Why are they doing this? I mean, we can ideate all we want, right? Seemingly what IRCC is doing, they have been doing, and they seemingly are going to continue to clamp down on temporary residents, right? So they're capping international students. They're making changes for visitors. They're making changes for workers, right? They just capped low-wage LMIAs. And this seems like a direct blow towards the small to medium-sized business owners who are maybe, in their opinion, quote-unquote, taking advantage of ICT. Now, what do I think about this? Great question. It seems to me like a not very good move, because are some people taking advantage of this original program? Probably, but the solution isn't to remove it entirely, in my opinion. Like, if I could broadly summarize what Immigration Canada has done over the last 11, 12 months, is they've basically said, hey, there's all these things wrong with immigration, largely because they caused it. What we're just going to do is start capping everything, right? They've capped international students. They've capped the startup visa program. They've capped the low-wage LMIA. Now they're making big adjustments to ICT towards entrepreneurs. But what they're not doing is they're not going to the core problems and fixing them. They're not addressing the fraud. They're not addressing the scammers, right? They're not addressing the shortcuts. They're just taking program by program and cutting them out at the knees, but not solving the underlying problem, in my opinion. If we have too many workers, fix that problem. Or if people are taking advantage of the ICT program, fix the way we're evaluating and decision-making on those ICT applications. The problem here is, what is one of the biggest issues that our country is facing right now? There's a lot of them, but one of the big issues is our economy. We're not creating new jobs and unemployment is up. What could help solve that? Business owners, entrepreneurs, growing and expanding businesses from other countries that want to expand into North America. Well, we just slapped all those people, metaphorically speaking, across the face with this change to ICT, right? Again, are there some people who shouldn't be using ICT as entrepreneurs that have been? Yeah, but we're not fixing that problem here per se. We're punishing all entrepreneurs, right? Like, what if there's a 40-year-old entrepreneur who has an incredibly impressive and successful company, but he or she only happens to operate in one country? They genuinely want to expand into Canada, build new offices, hire new people, create all these jobs, create all this economic benefit. Now they can't do that. They have to go into another country first. that other country is going to gain a whole bunch of benefits from that person. And then maybe we got to hope they still eventually come to Canada, but they might not. Maybe they don't have the time or money or energy to do that. Maybe they move to that second country and they actually love it there. Maybe they decide to expand to the UK or Australia or whatever first, and they're like, you know what? It's actually kind of nice here. Screw Canada. You know what I mean? So anyways, I personally do not like this change to ICT at all. It is just one man's opinion. It's just my opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Am I missing something here? Do you really like my paint picture? Maybe don't answer that. I think it's a bad move. I think it's turning away people that we should actually be really trying to attract right now. It's not fixing the core problem. I do understand that the government and IRCC needs to do some more restrictions on temporary residents. I don't disagree with that. I don't think this is the right way to do it. Anyways, as I said, that's my opinion. Let me know what you think, and we will continue to move on from there. Actually, before I move on too quickly to Express Entry, I just want to highlight that if you go on that earlier link, take a look through all of these changes from the last day, right? These were all posted on October 3rd. So there was a small update on what to consider for issuing TRPs. And then a lot of the other stuff that you'll see here has to do with the treaties, right? So the Canadian treaties with other countries. Number one, because most of those treaties mention ICT. And so because of the broad changes to ICT, obviously they've tweaked some of the ICT requirements with all these other countries as well. And then just to give you an idea, like what does the other one say? Like here's the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Have undergone extensive updates using a standardized format to improve navigation and clarity for officers. As well, ICT with specialized knowledge has been integrated. So if you are interested in those treaties, definitely check them out yourself, right? I sent you the link to this page a little bit higher up. Just click on the link, click on whichever agreement you're interested in, and read it from there. Hopefully that's helpful. Alrighty, moving right along, we are chugging. And the next topic, which is usually one of the longest segments of the show. So let me take another segue sip here. Will actually be one of the shorter ones on this episode of the Visto Show. Why? Because we haven't had an Express Entry draw. Again, I'm going to send you the link to this, putting it in LinkedIn if you're watching live. If you're on YouTube, it'll be in the description below. And there hasn't been a draw since September 19th. The government did a Canadian Experience class draw, inviting 4,000 people to apply. Let me actually refresh the page just to be, yeah, no draw. So I don't know. There should have been a draw, right? Because the 19th was a Thursday. And yeah, 2 weeks from the 19th was yesterday on October the 3rd. So I don't know what's happening. Sometimes things do eerily slow down near the end of the calendar year. I think even last year they kind of slowed down or stopped at one point near the end of the year because IRCC is getting close to their quota, or maybe they hit their quota. You know what? Now I'm interested. Let's take a look. I feel like there was a pause. Yeah, so last year you can see they were doing draws up through October, and then there was no draw at all in November, and they did they did go back to doing a decent amount of draws in December. So sometimes they kind of like pause and don't pause and unpause and repause near the end of the year just to kind of make sure that they're in line with their quotas for the year and they're not going over. I don't know if anybody has more information. Please feel free to let me know in the comments. But yeah, no Express Entry draw. It's been more than 2 weeks. It could be related to a lot of the changes, right? So they've made some changes to ICT. They've made some changes to a whole bunch of other stuff, right? Open work permits for H-1B visa holders, temporary resident. Oh, I think correction has been made to the expiry date. Okay, interesting. I remember if you all remember, I was quite unhappy with this program that came out last year. I think they shared some data. Came into effect. So if you all remember last year, they launched a program that said, hey, if you're an H-1B holder, you can get a work permit to come to Canada. Did they share any data? Cap, blah, 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 blue, 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 blue. I'd be interested. I feel like somebody shared this data, and I can't remember. I feel like I saw a post earlier this week that said that even though the cap was 10,000, only something like 1,000, like less than 2,000 people have actually even come to Canada because of it, which is no surprise to me, which is what I said was a big concern from the get-go. But yeah, if anybody has links to like data on how much of this has actually come to fruition over the last year or two, I'd be very curious to see it. I'm not seeing any data here. Anyways, I will take a look out and maybe we'll cover that in another episode. Jorge is in the house. He says, most ICT work permits I worked were highly qualified professionals working for highly productive companies. This is a bad move. Yeah, I mean, that's another thing to consider. Well, one thing, Jorge, is I think this change only affects owner-operators. So that's one of the good things, right? So for example, definitely do an in-depth review, right? But you can see here, foreign nationals and or immediate family members who own a controlling interest are not eligible unless they are able to demonstrate that their enterprise meets the requirements of an MNC. So I don't think it affects non-owner operators. To be eligible, the employee must be an executive. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I would definitely read this in depth, Jorge. I hope that that new definition of MNC doesn't apply to everybody. Because like you said, most ICT work permits are being used so that very successful, smart, qualified people can move to Canada and work out of offices in Canada, which is very important. I think this is a specific carve-out for owner-operators. I could be wrong. I'm no expert on that topic, and I should probably read it a little bit more in depth. But yeah, that was my initial interpretation, Jorge. So we'll have to see what kind of comes of that. And I could be wrong. Oops, there was one more comment from Sajid. Sajid, how are you? Thank you very much for tuning in. The recent changes said public college graduates will be eligible for 3-year PGWP, but have to be related to labor shortages. Does public colleges include public universities like York University? That's a good question, Sajid. I think we're still waiting to hear. Didn't they say they'd be announcing the specifics of that update? I think closer to, was it October, November? I don't remember. I think when they originally made that announcement, they said that they will provide full details a little bit closer to. Where the heck did the program delivery thing go? Was it here? Yeah, here. I don't think we've heard, Sajid, any more than what they've told us so far. Like, they haven't fully explained, number one, what do they mean by labor, related to labor shortages, and number two, exactly which schools it might affect. I don't think, right? So I'll keep an eye on that, and hopefully we'll provide, or they will provide a little bit more information closer to as well. So that is it for, so not much else to explain in terms of express entry. Sorry, getting back on topic here. We will monitor it very closely, and we will see what happens. And of course, if anybody hears anything, then please let me know. Last but not least, or maybe second last but not least, new episode of the Canadian Immigration Pros podcast. came out live
a
couple days ago. If you haven't already checked it out, make sure, let me pull up the link here. Canadian Immigrant, oh, there it is. So I am also the host of the Canadian Immigration Pros podcast. This is where I interview other successful Canadian immigration lawyers, consultants, all that fun stuff, wide variety of topics. And what we discussed this past week, now if you go to this link, you'll be able to find it on YouTube if you want to watch. You can also find just the audio on your favorite podcast platform. The latest episode, I was lucky to have Yana Tasheva on the show, and we did a deep dive into Alberta. Why, you say? Well, PR, permanent residence, is getting harder than ever, right? And so I've been bringing on a few guests that are experts in specific PNPs, because those can be good options if you're struggling through something like express entry. So Yana lives in Alberta, does almost exclusively Alberta PNP, and we had a really good conversation talking about a whole bunch of stuff. Just a general overview of the program, the benefits of living in Alberta, right? What are the pros, what are the cons? Challenges and changes in the PNP recently, what to keep in mind, some tips, opportunities, and other stuff like that. So definitely check it out. If you haven't already, make sure you also subscribe, whether it be on YouTube or whatever podcast platform that you like, to the Canadian Immigration Pros podcast. And I think you will find it valuable and learn some stuff as well. Sajid says, thanks, yes, on 1st of November. Yes, so we will stay tuned for that, Sajid. I will probably go live on or shortly thereafter, the 1st of November, because not only are there going to be a lot of those updates, they're also going to be releasing the levels plan, which will be revised this year, because they're also, as most of you know, there's a yearly levels plan for permanent residents where they set their target. This year, they're also including their targets for temporary residents as well. So there will be a lot to discuss, a lot to break down, and it will certainly make for an interesting couple days. So stay tuned for that. Ken says, oh, just in time. Hey, Ken, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully your Friday is going well. That's actually it for me, folks, I think. Let me go back to the agenda here. Yeah, that was it. Really quickly, as an update on my end and with Visto, so as many of you know, Visto is a software company. We build software for Canadian immigration lawyers and consultants and law firms. We make it a lot easier to prepare applications, do research, draft documents, all that kind of stuff. So if you are spending a lot of time preparing applications, documents, research, writing, definitely check us out at Visto.ai, Visto.ai. We have some cool stuff on the way. We're currently improving our AI chatbot. So if you haven't already checked out our Copilot, I would highly recommend checking this out as well. As far as I know, it's Canada's first and only custom-built Canadian immigration chatbot. So you can basically start asking it Canadian immigration questions, and it is quite smart. There's a free trial as well. I'll put the link in the description here on LinkedIn and or on YouTube as well. You can log in. We have a free trial, so you can just start asking it immigration questions. It'll start answering with sources and all that kind of stuff. So anyways, check it out at that link below, Visto.ai/Copilot, or just click on the link that I sent. That is it for me today. Want to thank everybody for tuning in. We had some really good action here live on LinkedIn. Ali says, thanks for the time, and I hope we can connect soon. Thanks, Ali, for tuning in. We had a whole bunch of people connect live. Jorge says, Visto, please bring us immigration forms in French. Jorge, we're still talking about it. You know why we haven't yet. We've talked about this before. Oh, if I could snap my fingers and have French, I would, right? Unfortunately, there's just a little bit more to it than that goes into it, but it's always on our mind, and we are continuing to have conversations about it as well. So that is it for me today. Want to say a big thank you to everybody who tuned in live on LinkedIn. Don't forget, I do this every 2 weeks, live on LinkedIn, Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern. If you're following me on LinkedIn, I post about it ahead of time as well, and then it's easy to just jump in live like a whole bunch of you have today, which I really appreciate. If you're watching after the fact on YouTube, then a like, a subscribe always helps, but also jump over to follow me on LinkedIn if you want to tune in live and never miss a session as well. Brandon says the best program by far. Thanks very much, Brandon. Appreciate the kind words and glad to hear that you're finding it helpful. So thank you again, everybody, for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Hopefully you have a great rest of your day, and make sure to tune in to the next one as well. Take care, everybody. Jorge says, thanks for your updates, Josh. Great show. Thanks, Jorge. Glad to hear that you found it helpful. We will be in touch. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one. Take care, everybody. Have a good one.